I need you to understand. The pain I felt was not of this world. It wasn't a broken bone, a cut on the skin, or the fire of a burn. It was the pain of the soul, a pain that screamed in the silence, an agony that tore at my core, without anesthesia, without relief, without end. It all started on an ordinary day, a day that had nothing special about it. I had woke up, had my coffee, kissed my wife and children. To everyone, I was a good man, a family man, a hard worker, a role model in the neighborhood, but it was all a sham. My life was a house of cards built on the quicksand of lies, little lies at first, the kind we tell to get out of a problem, to appear better than we are. I'm on my way when I hadn't even left home. Don't worry, I'll fix it. When I knew I wasn't going to do anything, I love you. Spoken out loud while my heart was elsewhere. Over time, the lies grew, became more complex, more poisonous. They became my air, my way of life. I lied at work to get a promotion. I lied to friends to keep up appearances. I lied to my wife about where I was, who I was with, about the money I spent. I became an expert in the art of deception. My face didn't tremble, my voice didn't crack. I was the perfect liar. And that afternoon, as I drove home, thinking about the next excuse I would give for being late, my heart lurched, a stab, a needle of ice piercing my chest. I lost my breath. The steering wheel went limp in my hands, my vision darkened. And then nothing, a silence that hurt my ears. I opened my eyes, but I wasn't in my car anymore. I was floating. I looked down and saw the scene. The car was crushed against a pole, the windows shattered, and my body inside, inert, my eyes open and empty. I was dead. The panic that rose within me was not that of a man who had lost his life, but that of an actor whose play had suddenly ended and now had nowhere else to go. I saw my spirit, a transparent, ethereal form, being pulled, not up, not toward a light. I was pulled down with a force I could not resist. The fall was the most terrifying thing I had ever experienced. There was no wind, no sound, only a dizzying speed in the most absolute darkness imaginable, a darkness that weighed heavily, that suffocated, that crushed my soul. And the smell, oh, the smell started out subtle, a smell of sulfur, of rotten eggs, but it grew stronger, denser. Soon it mingled with the odor of burning flesh, of disease, of rot, and something I can only describe as pure, crystallized fear. It was the smell of hopelessness. When the fall stopped, it wasn't a soft landing, it was an impact. I didn't hit solid ground, I fell into a sea of agony. The place was dark, lit only by a sickly red glow, coming from rivers of fire that cut through the landscape of twisted black rock. And the sounds, my God! The sounds weren't human screams, they were howls of pure pain, wailing that never stopped, the hide of billions of souls in eternal torment. I was paralyzed with terror. My first reaction was to try to pray, but the words wouldn't come. It was as if the name of God was forbidden in that place. I tried to think of something good about my family, but the memories came distorted, stained by the truth of my lies. I couldn't feel love, only the weight of deception. It was then that I saw it. Not far from me, there was a specific area, a valley from where the screams seemed even more desperate. There were creatures there, demons of forms the human mind cannot create without going mad. They didn't use whips or tridents. Their torture was more cruel. I saw a soul, that of a man who seemed to have been important on earth. A hollow-eyed demon held his head and clawed sharp knives ripped out his tongue. But that wasn't the horror. The tongue grew back instantly, and the demon ripped it out again and again and again, and each time the tongue was ripped out, the man was forced to scream, not with his mouth, but with his soul. One of his lies, I was faithful. The soul screamed in agony, and the demon ripped out his tongue. I was honest, and the process repeated itself. With each forced confession, his pain multiplied. He felt not only the physical pain of torture, but also the weight of every consequence his lies had caused in the lives of others. I watched, trembling, the cold sweat of terror running down my core, and a voice, cold and cutting, like broken glass, sounded inside my mind, a voice that wasn't mine, but came from the depths of that pit of perdition. This is the place of liars. the punishment for those whose lives were a fraud. My being froze. I understood that man was me, that it was my destiny, and then the demonic creature torturing that soul stopped slowly, as if it had smelled my scent. Like a predator locating its prey, it turned its misshapen head toward me, its eyes, two holes of infinite darkness, bored into me. A smile formed in its mouth full of needle-like teeth. It had found its next toy. Time in that place doesn't exist. A second can last an eternity. The demon's gaze on me lasted 1,000 years. In its empty eyes, I didn't see hatred. I saw something much worse, purpose. I was its work. My torment was its function. It didn't move quickly. It came toward me, floating, gliding over the hot rock with a sickening grace. With every inch he approached, the wailing hide around us seemed to dwindle, as if even the other damned souls were holding their breath to watch the beginning of a new torture. The air, if you could even call it air, grew heavier, hotter. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was pinned to the ground by my own terror. My entire soul screamed silently, a desperate prayer that couldn't find its way to heaven. When he stopped in front of me, I could see the details of his being. His skin was like leather stretched over broken bones, and from his back protruded appendages that writhed like worms. But worst of all was the smell coming from him. It was the smell of ancient lies, of secrets kept for centuries, the fetid odor of betrayal. He didn't open his mouth, but his voice boomed inside my head, a voice made of all the whispers and deceptions I'd ever uttered in my life. "Welcome home," the voice said, with a mocking tone that tore me apart. "The place that you built for yourself, brick by brick, lie by lie." He extended one of his claws, and his fingers, long and thin as razors, touched my forehead, and the instant he touched me, the hellscape disappeared. I was back home, but I wasn't me. I was my wife. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, waiting for him, for me. I felt the twinge of anxiety in her stomach, the doubt she was trying to push away. He said he was in a meeting because his phone was off. I felt her heart sink when I, my past self, arrived home with a fake smile and the scent of a perfume that wasn't hers. The meeting was exhausting, my love, I heard myself say, and hearing my own lie, I, in her skin, felt the stab of betrayal. It wasn't a suspicion, it was a painful certainty she chose to swallow so as not to destroy the family. Her pain became my pain, the lump in my throat, the tears she held back. The loneliness of being married to a stranger. I screamed, but no sound came out. The scene changed. Now I was my little son, 6 years old. He showed me a drawing he'd done at school, all proud. I pictured myself as the father taking the paper, looking at it for 2 seconds, and saying, "How beautiful, son, Daddy is so proud of you." But I, in my son's soul, felt the truth. I felt that my father wasn't really looking, that his words were hollow, automatic. I felt the small seed of insecurity being planted in his heart. "I'm never good enough for Daddy." That small moment of indifference, the lie disguised as a compliment, was a poison he would drink for the rest of his life. This was the torture, living and feeling firsthand the pain that each of my lies had caused. I saw my co-worker's despair when he was fired for a mistake I made and blamed him for it. I felt his humiliation when he had to tell his wife he could no longer pay the bills. I felt my mother's bitterness when I said I would visit her on her birthday and never showed up, making up some excuse. Every lie, no matter how big, was a stone I had thrown into someone's life, and now I was being pelted with them, feeling the impact of each one 1,000 times stronger. I rolled on the hot rock floor, which had now become my reality again. But the pain inside was infinitely worse than any burn. The demon watched me, his face, expressionless, seemed to delight in my agony. The voice returned to my head. "All the pain you sowed, you will reap forever, forever." That word echoed in the void. There would be no end, no forgiveness, only the eternal harvest of my own deceit. And in the midst of this absolute despair, a thought struck me, a thought not for me, but for you who are listening to this now. You who perhaps live a life of little lies, of deceptions that seem to hurt no one. Look at me, look at my suffering and understand, there is no such thing as a small lie. Each false word is a seed, and its fruit is pain, yours or someone else's. If this story speaks to you, If something inside your heart has stirred, stay with me. This journey is long and painful, but I need to tell you everything, and take this opportunity to subscribe to the channel. This is not just a video, it is a warning. A warning I wish I had received. The demon leaned over me, the rotten smell of betrayal filling my nostrils. Now, the voice in my mind said with terrible satisfaction, let's deal with the source of it all. Your lying tongue. He opened his mouth, in an impossible smile, and I saw he wasn't going to use his claws, he was going to use his own teeth. He approached my face, and I closed my eyes, waiting for the pain I knew was coming. I waited for the rip, the laceration, but what came first was the sound. A wet snap, like a rotten twig being snapped, echoed inside my head, and then the pain. My God! The pain, there are no words in our languages to describe it. It was a white flash of pure agony that exploded in my mouth and ignited every nerve in my body. That creature's teeth were sharper than shards of glass and colder than death. I felt my tongue being ripped out by the root, a violent pull that seemed to take my entire throat with it. The taste of my own blood, mixed with the rot of the demon's saliva, filled my mouth. It was a taste of scrap metal, of ash, and of a bitterness that came from the very essence of evil. I tried to scream, but could only make a gurgling, choking sound, and then, at the height of that excruciating pain, something even more terrible happened. I felt it. I felt the flesh shifting in my mouth, the fibers reconnecting, the nerves growing back at an unholy speed. In less than a second, my tongue was there again, whole, sensitive, pulsing with residual pain, ready to be tortured again. The despair that flooded me was worse than the physical pain. It was the mathematical certainty of infinity, the understanding that there would be no relief, no body accustoming itself to the pain. It would always be the first time, forever. The demon stepped away for an instant, a trickle of blood from my soul running down its chin. Its empty eyes stared at me, waiting, and a strength that wasn't mine took hold of me. My mouth opened against my will, and the first lie I'd been forced to confess tore through the sulphurous air. I love you. I screamed, my voice filled with an anguish that wasn't mine, but my wife's. The very moment the word left my mouth, the creature attacked again. The same crack, the same blinding pain, the same taste of perdition, and as my tongue was ripped out for the second time, I was forced to feel her loneliness that night, the silent tear that ran down her face while she thought I was sleeping. The physical pain and the pain of her soul merged into one unbearable torture. The tongue grew back. I'm proud of you, son. The attack came again, merciless, and with the pain I felt my boy's insecurity, the doubt that would haunt him as a teenager, the feeling that he would never be good enough for his father. Each lie was a new cycle, a new mutilation. Don't worry, Mom, I'll come visit you. The crack, the pain, and the feeling of abandonment of my old mother, staring at the gate all day, waiting for a son who would never arrive. Hell was part of the spectacle. With each screamed confession, the river of fire beside me rose, and the flames seemed to lick at my feet. The other damned souls, who had previously been in their own agonies, now turned to me. Their wailings turned to cruel laughter, echoes of my own lies. He loves you, a faceless soul mocked. He is proud of you, another screamed in a shrill voice. I had become their entertainment. Humiliation was a new ingredient in my cocktail of suffering. My identity was being undone. I was no longer a man, I was a sequence of failures, a collection of mistakes. My existence was being reduced to the pain I had caused. My memories of myself were being replaced by memories of how others felt. A ghost, a liar, a disappointment. I could no longer remember my own face, only the sad faces of those I deceived. And in the midst of this whirlwind of pain, shame, and disintegration, a light, not an external light, but a spark within my deepest memory, an image, me, 5 years old, in my grandmother's kitchen, the smell of cornmeal cake in the air, her handing me a warm piece and saying, "My grandson, never forget, truth is the bread of the soul, lies are the poison we drink, thinking they will quench the thirst of others." I felt the warmth of the plate in my hand, the sincerity in her gaze. It was the last time I remembered hearing a pure truth and feeling it in my heart. It was a memory before the fall, before the house of cards, a fragment of who I should have been. That flash of pure truth was like a drop of holy water in the midst of that ocean of sulfur. The devil felt it. His torture stopped mid-cycle. He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes beyond cold purpose. I saw anger, a fury deep and ancient, the hatred of evil against any vestige of good. The voice in my head didn't mock, it growled, full of venom. Memories, memories of light, they don't belong to you, they have no place here. The creature towered over me, larger and more menacing than before, its claws lengthened, glowing with a dark, evil light. We won't just rip out your tongue, we'll rip out your history. We'll erase every shred of light that has ever touched you. The demon raised its claws toward my head. The target wasn't my mouth anymore, it was my mind, it was my soul. It was going to extirpate the only good thing I had left, the last echo of who I was before I lost myself. The pain that was to come wouldn't be in my flesh, it would be in my essence. The tip of its claws touched my temple. There was no cut, no blood. Instead, a chill poured into my head, a cold that didn't freeze, but petrified the soul. I felt the foul presence of that creature infiltrating my thoughts, searching the corridors of my mind like a thief searching for the only jewel I had left. The image of my grandmother, of the cornmeal cake, of her gentle smile, was all I had. It was my only treasure in that place of misery, and the demon wanted to steal it. I felt it approaching that memory. I saw with the eyes of my soul its dark claws trying to touch that scene of light, and for the first time since I reached that abyss, I fought not with strength, for I had none, not with words, for my mouth was only good for screaming lies. I fought with my heart. I clung to that memory like a drowning man clings to a piece of wood. I focused on the feeling, on the warmth of my grandmother's embrace, on the security her voice brought me, on the unconditional love that emanated from her. It was a true love, a truth I had forgotten, but which my soul still recognized. The demon tried to corrupt the scene. He made my grandmother's face contort into a grimace of hatred. He tried to turn her words into accusations. You are a liar. You have shamed me. The smell of cornmeal cake turned into the smell of sulfur, but I didn't let go. I focused on the original feeling, on the truth of that love, and for an instant the demon's illusion wavered. My grandmother's face returned to normal, the smell of cake returned, and for a split second, the love of that memory pushed back the darkness. It was a tiny, almost insignificant victory, but in hell, a drop of pure water has the power of an ocean. Something changed around me. The laughter of the other damned souls stopped. The red glow of the rivers of fire seemed to dim, as if my small resistance had somehow unbalanced the harmony of that place of absolute suffering. The demon withdrew its claws from my mind with a snarl of fury. Frustration emanated from it in waves of heat. It hadn't expected resistance. It hadn't counted on a fragment of true love being such a stubborn shield. The voice in my head was no longer cold and calculating, it was a howl of pure rage. So you cling to the past? The truths you've abandoned? Very well, let's see how your truth survives when it's drowned in an ocean of truth. From the others, with brutal force, he grabbed me and dragged me. My spiritual feet, if I had any, were dragged by the sharp rocks, but I barely felt it. My dread was focused on what was to come. He took me to the edge of something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't a river of fire, it was a lake, a vast, dark lake, whose surface reflected no light. It was black, oily, and still, like the glass of a coffin. The smell that came from that lake was the smell of sadness, a smell of salty tears dried on pillows, of sobs muffled in the solitude of the night, deep disappointment. And there were sounds, whispers, thousands, millions of whispers that rose from the dark water like vapor. They were voices I knew. Why? Whispered the voice of my wife, did you promise? Whispered the voice of my son, I trusted you. My friend's voice whispered. It was the echoes of all the pain I'd caused, preserved, concentrated in that liquid of bitterness. It was a lake made of the tears shed because of me. The demon lifted me into the air, holding me above the black surface of that sea of pain. I could see small whirlpools in the water, and in each one a face formed for an instant, the face of someone I had hurt with my lies. They looked at me from the water, their eyes filled with the sadness that was my fault. "You want the truth?" The demon's voice hissed in my ear, his fury now transformed into sadistic pleasure. "Well, drink the truth, drown yourself in it." He held me there, suspended between the sulphurous air and the water of sadness, forcing me to face the liquid consequence of my entire life. He wanted me to feel every drop of that suffering, and then it opened its claws. I began to fall toward the dark, whispering surface of that lake of tears. The impact wasn't like falling into water, it was like being swallowed by velvet, cold and heavy. The substance of the lake was thick, oily, and clung to me instantly, not just to my form, but to my very essence. It was the cold of loneliness, the cold of a broken heart, a cold that came not from the absence of warmth, but from the overwhelming presence of sadness. The moment I submerged, the world became darkness and sound. The whispers I heard on the surface transformed into a deafening drumbeat within my soul. Every drop of that lake was a tear, and every tear contained the memory of the pain that created it. I didn't need to breathe, but the feeling of drowning was total and absolute. My astral lungs burned, begging for air that didn't exist, while the weight of that sea of grief crushed me, pulling me down. It was the physics of consequence. The weight of the suffering I'd caused was the anchor that sank me. In that liquid darkness, faces flickered and disappeared. My wife's disappointed face, tears shining in her eyes, my son's confused face, trying to understand why his father's promise had been broken again, my colleague's pale, shocked face, the day he learned he had lost everything. They didn't accuse me, they just looked at me, and their gaze was pain itself. The disgusting liquid began to seep into me. I felt their pain becoming mine. It was no longer an observation like the first time. Now I was dissolving into it. The bitterness of my wife's betrayal lodged in my chest like an icy tumor. My son's insecurity enveloped my heart, squeezing it until I could barely feel its beating. My friend's humiliation rose in my throat, choking me with a shame that wasn't originally mine, but now rightfully belonged to me. I was becoming a living repository of the pain I had sown. My own identity, already fragile, began to unravel completely. Who was I if not the sum of those pains? The liar has no essence of his own. He is merely a void filled by the reactions of those he deceives, and there, at the bottom of the well of my own creation, I was becoming that void. The fall seemed endless, but finally I felt my being touch bottom. It wasn't sand or stone, it was a dense, soft layer of something. It was a slime made of broken promises, of words of trust that had turned to dust, and in that slime I saw things, ghosts of futures my lies had killed. I saw the image of a family trip I'd promised my son but never kept, crumbling to ashes. I saw the brilliant project my colleague would have created if I hadn't stolen his opportunity. I saw the reflection of an elderly couple, my wife and I, sitting happily on a porch, a happiness that could never exist because of the rotten foundation I'd built. These were the graves of possibilities, and I lay upon them. The struggle was over, there was no more resistance. The memory of my grandmother was a distant star, completely invisible from that depth. There was only the pain, the heaviness, the cold, and the sickening certainty that this was justice. I deserved this, I was this. And when I accepted this truth, when I surrendered to despair as my final and permanent state, I felt something new. At first, it was subtle, a tremor in the mud of broken promises beneath me, then a slow, rhythmic, strong pulse, and with it a warmth that wasn't the hellfire I knew. It was an organic, living warmth. Something was buried there, buried in the depths of sadness, something ancient. The pulse grew stronger, and the mud began to shift. The whispers of sadness that enveloped me changed tone. Grief turned to fear. The voices weren't wailing now, they shrieked in panic. Whatever was down there, even the tormented souls feared it. The ground beneath me began to crack, the heat grew intense, and a sickly red light began to shine through the fissures. I wasn't alone at the bottom of that lake, I was on the ceiling of a prison, and my arrival, my desperate acceptance of the lie as my final identity, had somehow been the key. The pulse stopped, a deep, expectant silence filled the abyss, and then, from the slime far below me, something began to emerge, a vast, dark shape, uncoiling slowly. It wasn't a demon like the ones I'd seen, it was something primordial, and I felt it, with a terror that made all the previous torture seem like a caress, that it was waking and hungry. The slime opened like the mouth of a leviathan. What emerged had no fixed form. It was a mountain of living darkness, a tumor of shadows pulsing with that sickly red light. The surface of the thing was an ever-changing nightmare. On it, I saw the image forming and dissolving, the face of a politician making a promise he knew to be false, the smile of a salesman guaranteeing the quality of a rotten product, the look of a friend pledging loyalty while plotting a betrayal. They were fragments of countless acts of deceit, all stitched together to form the skin of that abomination. The waters of the lake, once merely sad, now seethed with dread. The souls that dwelt there fled to the depths, trying to hide from something that was evidently far more ancient and terrible than their own suffering. I looked toward the shore and saw the demon who had first thrown me there. His posture wasn't that of a predator. He was paralyzed, watching the creature's ascension with a kind of terrified reverence. My executioners were afraid. In that moment, I understood the hierarchy of hell. There are prisoners like me, there are guards like demons, and there are the foundations. The very primordial forces from which sin springs. I was in the presence of one of them. The creature rose completely from the lake, its vastness blocking out the scant red glow of the hellish horizon, and then she spoke. The voice came not from one mouth, but from everywhere at once. It was a cacophony of billions of voices, all speaking in unison, yet each distinct. I heard the soft voice of a mother lying to her son, the firm voice of a judge accepting a bribe, the passionate voice of a lover making a false oath, and amidst that cacophony of falsehood, to my utter horror, I heard my own voice, repeating the lame excuses I gave my wife, the empty praise I gave my son. Behold, the voice resonated in my soul. The final consequence: the little demons punish the sinner, they feed on your pain, but I am the hunger behind sin. I am the idea before the word. I am the crack in the truth, and you, son of my art, you awakened me. I did not understand how I could have done that. Your life continued as Lars Hyde. It was a prayer spoken to me over decades. Every mistake, every omission, every distorted truth was a brick in the construction of your soul. At the bottom of this lake, you not only felt the pain you caused, you accepted it, you merged with it, you became a pure lie without the veneer of the man you pretended to be. This purity, this perfection in your fall, was what freed me from my prison of tears. I floated before that helpless thing. I expected new pain, torture on a cosmic scale, but what came was something infinitely more dangerous. You are beautiful, the voice said, and for the first time, the hide fell silent, and a single voice, seductive and persuasive, spoke to me. Others lie out of necessity, out of fear. You lied out of habit, out of comfort. You made lying your nature. You are an artist, and an artist does not deserve to be a plaything for petty gods. The creature extended a tentacle of shadow, my direction. It wasn't threatening, it was an invitation. Look at your torment, the torn-out tongue, the drowning in sorrow. It's an endless cycle of pain and humiliation. It's ineffective, it's unworthy of you. I offer you an alternative. I couldn't look away from the tentacle slowly approaching. Unite with me, immerse yourself in my essence, abandon this shell of memories and pain you call me. In return, the pain will cease, the suffering will end. You will no longer be a tortured soul. You will become part of the power that moves the world. You will be the voice in the king's ear, the doubt in the saint's heart. You will be the lie, and the lie feels no pain. It simply is. The offer hung in the heavy air of hell, a way out, an end to the agony. All I needed to do was give up myself, that self that was already in tatters, that identity that had brought me only suffering. It was the ultimate temptation. To exchange an eternity of conscious pain for an eternity of painless and powerful existence, to exchange the cross for the throne. I looked at the tentacle of darkness, then I looked at the shore, at the demon watching me, almost hoping I would accept. The pain of the lake still pulsing in every fiber of my being, the echo of my tongue being ripped out still vibrated in my mouth. And all this, one touch was all it took, one yes was all it took. The tentacle stopped inches from me, waiting, All of hell held its breath. With an effort that seemed to take millennia, I raised my spiritual arm. My hand trembled, not with fear, but with desire. The desire for an end to the pain was the most powerful force I had ever known. My hand reached for the shadow, one touch and it would all end. My hand moved forward, the decision made. The end of the pain was just a touch away. The tips of my spiritual fingers brushed the edge of the shadow tentacle. I felt a chill that promised nothingness, emptiness, the peace of non-existence. Yes, this was what I wanted. Yes, and in that instant of final surrender, in that silent yes that surrendered my soul, an image exploded in my mind. It wasn't the memory of my grandmother, who by then was already buried under layers of agony. It was something much more primordial, my son's face, not as the insecure boy I had raised, but as a baby just hours old in my arms in the hospital. I remembered his smell, his tiny, perfect weight on my chest. I remembered looking at that little being that came from me and feeling a wave of love so overwhelming, so pure, and so true. It left me breathless. In that moment, in the middle of that sterile hospital room, I wasn't a liar. I wasn't thinking about myself, my excuses, my image. I was just a father, and the love I felt was the only absolute truth in my life. I didn't need to construct it, I didn't need to invent it. It simply was the truth, so simple and so fundamental. It was like the sunrise in the midst of the darkness of hell. The tentacle of shadow I was about to touch sizzled like grilled meat and recoiled violently. The entire creature contracted, and the skin of lying voices that formed its being dissolved in a single shriek of pure agony. The truth of that pure love was poison to it. Lies are complex, full of layers and intentions. That love was simple, and the simplicity of truth was something the complexity of lies could not bear. No, the creature's voice bellowed, no longer seductive, but filled with cosmic hatred. This mark, this filthy light, I know it. It is his signature. The mark of the Father on his creation. How dare you bring it before me? Hell trembled. The offer was cancelled. The mask of seduction fell, revealing a face of infinite fury. The creature's form stirred, no longer revealing small mistakes, but the ultimate result of all lies. I saw armies marching to war because of a false treaty. I saw stock markets crashing because of whispered rumors. I saw the map of the world being redrawn with the blood of millions, all because of lies told in halls of power. It was the apocalypse of falsehood. You had your chance, the creature stole. Your voice was now the sound of a continent breaking apart. You became part of the glory of annihilation, but you clung to a fragment of creation. You chose pain, and pain, little soul, is something I can provide with an art your torturers never dreamed of. The tentacle that once invited me now became a whip of solid darkness. It struck me with the force of a mountain. The pain was unlike anything before. It wasn't a tear, it wasn't a drowning, it was a pain of undoing. I felt my essence, my spiritual form, beginning to unravel like rotting tissue. Do you refuse to be one with the lie? The voice echoed as I was struck again and again. Then you will be undone by it. I will deconstruct you, atom by atom of soul. I will transform you into a million whispers of maybes, into a dust of you will be nothing but a doubt floating in the void. The creature stopped striking me. I hovered before her, my form already flickering, almost transparent, and then, in the center of her chaotic mass of shadows, a hole opened, a vortex of even deeper darkness, a whirlpool that drew not light, but reality itself. It was a mouth made to swallow souls. Your punishment will no longer be to feel the pain you caused, the entity decreed, and the vortex began to spin faster, exerting an irresistible pull on me. Your punishment will be to become the material for new lies. Your energy will be the fuel for the next betrayal. Your agony will be the inspiration for the next deception. I was being pulled. My spirit form stretched, dissolving into threads of pale light, which were sucked into that mouth of oblivion. The memory of my son, the spark of love that had saved me, was being extinguished, not by the demon's corruption, but by the sheer force of that annihilation. I was being consumed. My existence was about to be erased and recycled as energy for the very evil I had served my entire life. I closed the eyes of my soul, waiting for the final end. The threads of my soul were coming loose, each one taking with it a memory, a feeling, a piece of who I was. I felt the memory of my first day of